Hi, and welcome back. In this video, we will look at the history of management over the past 120 years. Management as a profession was established at the beginning of the 20th century. Back then, more and more organizations were becoming larger and larger. Prior to that, the vast majority of people was employed in organizations of less than 4 people. But with US Steel and the Ford Motor Company, we saw the rise of large organizations, and those organizations needed management, which basically meant managing people, telling them what to do and how to do it. Frederick Winslow Taylor was one of the first people who codified management. And his approach is called scientific management, or many people also refer to it as command and control management, today also known as Taylorism. His codification of the management profession was of course based on his view of humans, was based on his assumptions. One of the people that shared a very similar view to Taylor was Ford. And there's a great quote that illustrates how both of them looked at other human beings. Ford famously said that it's a pity that whenever you need a pair of hands, they come with a brain attached. Let that sink in for a moment. It is a pity whenever you need a pair of hands, they come with a brain attached. Neither Ford nor Taylor nor other people in that time needed their employees' engagement and creativity. They needed their pairs of hands. But if you look at today's organizations, do we need just the pairs of hands? We actually don't, right? We need the creativity, we need the engagement, we need the problem-solving skills. So Management 1.0, we refer to this as Taylorism, was created at the beginning of the 20th century. And its whole purpose was to tell people very clearly what to do and how to do it. That approach was only possible in a domain where complexity was not really high. And we stick to Ford and the automotive sector for the remainder of this video. The type of car that Ford famously built from 1908 till 1927, over a period of 20 years, was the Ford Model T. And the Model T, to this date, is a symbol for reducing complexity. Whenever at Bain & Company I was working on projects with regards to complexity reduction, we always called it the Model T approach. So going back to this curve for exponential change over the past 100 years, we can look at 1908, or the beginning of the 20th century, where we have low complexity with regards to the products that the organizations are building. Projecting it forward till 2020, we see the typical shape of an exponential curve. Now let's stick to the automotive space. The next organization that we look at is around the 1960s in Japan, and it is Toyota. Toyota, post-World War II, wanted to build cars and not only sell them within Japan. So they needed to get to a certain quality. The market leaders at that point in time were companies like General Motors and Ford. By the way, a quick side story. Part of Ford's complexity reduction was also reducing the car to only one color. Another great quote from Henry Ford is that the customer can have any color they want as long as it's black. And one of the reasons that GM was able to surpass Ford as the leader in the automotive space was their offering of various colors. So Toyota was now able to send some of their best engineers to go and visit GM and get a good perspective on what they're doing in order to build cars at scale at high quality. When those engineers returned, they were asked, so can we build our cars the same way that GM is building their cars? And the answer was no. Why? Because it's always based on the context that you're in. For example, GM, as a successful company, had a lot of cash at their hands, and they also had good credit with organizations or with banks. So GM was able to buy a lot of parts and put them in large warehouses. So whenever they needed one of those parts as part of their production, they could go into that warehouse and get that part. Toyota, on the other hand, did not have as much cash on hand. So they could not follow GM's best practices. By now you know that best practices only exist in simple or complicated domains at best. They don't exist whenever you have complexity, let alone chaos. Back then, one of the grandsons of the founder of Toyota, Akio Toyoda, was smart enough to identify that GM's best practices could not be Toyota's best practices. He was smart enough to identify that there is no best, only better. And that was the birth of the lean movement within Toyota and then later in many other organizations. What Toyota realized is that they cannot just take someone else's best practices. They actually have to understand that within their constraints, within their context, and that context is also constantly changing, they always have to aim for becoming better. In order to do that, they not only needed the hands of their employees, they actually needed their creativity, they needed their brains. But it's not enough to tell them, be creative. You need to give them decision-making authority. And this is a pattern that we will see as part of this video. So Toyota moved decision-making authority, for example, being able to stop the assembly line to the workers at the line, to where the information is. And whenever these workers identified a problem or challenge or an opportunity to improve something, they just stopped the line. And then blue-collar workers and white-collar workers, they gathered around this problem similar to a rugby team, and they came up with an approach on how to address it going forward. Step by step by step, Toyota started building better and better and better cars, till they ultimately managed to build some of the best cars in the world with the best process in the world, resulting in a much higher profitability than other longer existing organizations like General Motors or Volkswagen. Even today, Toyota's market capitalization is more than twice as much as Volkswagen, while both built the same amount of cars, more or less around 10 million per year. Management 2.0 or lean management was a huge shift in how management and leadership can be approached. And despite Japan being highly hierarchical as a society, Toyota managed to decentralize more and more decision-making authority, decentralize those decisions to the people working where the information is. Now let's jump another 50 to 60 years. And as promised, we will stick to the automotive space. The company that we look at now is Tesla, and you have heard some case studies about Tesla before. Tesla is a startup in the automotive space, actually the first startup within 70 years that managed to succeed, had to deal with much higher complexity than the organizations that came before them. They were not only going to build a car, they were going to build a different car and a different business model around it. What Tesla did really well is to follow this pattern that Toyota had established earlier. They decentralized even more decisions. Where Toyota decentralized the how decisions, how we built the car, not what kind of car are we building, Tesla started out decentralizing both how and what. So small cross-functional teams, call them agile teams or scrum teams, were in charge of a specific product or sub-product. Those teams, equipped with all the knowledge needed in order to build those products, both in terms of R&D and mass production, were given the authority to make all relevant decisions around them. And through that, Tesla not only managed to build great electric cars, they actually managed to build great cars and even better, an ecosystem, a business model around them. So going back to our chart, where we see the exponential change or the pace of change being exponential over time from the beginning of the 20th century till today, we can also see the different types of management related to the level of complexity. Where complexity was low, command and control management, similar to Taylorism, was okay. It actually resulted in a lot of success for companies like Ford. When complexity increased due to a different context, like in 1960 at Toyota, it was important to decentralize at least parts of those decisions so that the organization could embrace a culture of continuous learning. And the more the complexity increases, similar to the world we live in right now, the more important it becomes to decentralize more and more decisions. If we only decentralize decision-making to individuals and teams, it can obviously result in anarchy, which is not going to be a foundation for success for any organization. Equally important becomes alignment. Equally important becomes the ability to provide a clear vision, a clear purpose for the organization. Equally important becomes how we manage the interfaces, the interactions between each of those highly empowered teams. All of these challenges will be addressed as part of this course. I hope you really enjoyed this history of management and how we moved from Management 1.0 to Management 3.0, which we refer to as Agile Leadership.